the porn star continuing to plague the presidency, Stormy Daniels, also known as Stephanie Clifford, going after President Trump personally in a brand new lawsuit, the defamation claim filed just this afternoon, stemming from the president's tweet about the sketch of the man Daniels says threatened her back in 2011. President Trump writing, quote, a sketch years later about a non-existent man, a total con job, playing the fake news media for fools, but they know it. The lawsuit filed in the Southern District of New York alleging, quote, by calling the incident a con job, Mr. Trump's statement would be understood to state that Miss Clifford, that's Stormy Daniels' real name, was fabricating the crime and the existence of the assailant, both of which are prohibited under New York law, as well as the law of numerous other states. CNN's Sarah Seidner is covering this breaking news story for us. And Sarah, this lawsuit asserts that the president used his audience of tens of millions of Twitter followers to make a false statement and defame Stormy Daniels, and that she suffered because of it.
Right, that is literally the language in the lawsuit, and Michael Avenatti and Stormy Daniels obviously putting this forward in court, saying that they're going to ask for an excess of $75,000, which of course is the standard minimum in cases like this. Of course, asking for a jury in this case, obviously that takes a long time, but it is all based on that tweet that you mentioned by President Trump on April 18th, after Stormy Daniels had mentioned on The View first and then elsewhere that there was this alleged attack, alleged threat to her in 2011 in a Las Vegas parking lot. She gave this sketch. She went to a sketch artist. Her and Michael Avenatti had a sketch artist. She said she was trying to recall all the details of what the person looked like. She had also said in an interview to 60 Minutes that she would never forget that face. A man, she said, approached her. This is a picture or a rendition of that man. And she said, look, you know, this is what happened. I was too afraid to go to the police. She never went to the police. Donald Trump then reacting and basically calling it all a con job and fake news, and her attorney saying, look, that's defamation, and that should be pointed out. Also, he talks a little bit about the case in here as well, of what happened in 2011 and the fact that the story ended up in Touch magazine. Jake?
And Sarah, there's new information in this lawsuit about how the alleged Trump affair ended up in Touch magazine, that it was her ex-husband who leaked out the news of this alleged affair without her permission.
Right. I mean, that's what it states in this lawsuit at the urging of Miss Clifford's ex-husband, who approached the magazine without her permission. We have learned from two different sources that indeed that is not exactly how it went down. In fact, it was her manager that was peddling the story to In Touch magazine, according to people familiar with the information and the incident. And there you're seeing the cover of the In Touch magazine article. Not only did she talk to a reporter who we have also talked to and interviewed, but she took a lie detector test as well, and the people that we were speaking with who have knowledge of how this all went down told us that indeed it was Miss Daniels' own manager who was putting this story forth to In Touch magazine, and Miss Daniels herself had said that she was going to be paid $15,000 for it when she did her 60 Minutes interview. She was never paid that money, though. They did not publish the interview because they were threatened with a lawsuit by Michael Cohen.
All right, Sarah Seidner, thank you so much. My panel joins me now. We have with us CNN legal analyst Laura Coates, former South Carolina House member Bakari Sellers, a Democrat, Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today, and Amanda Carpenter, former communications director for Republican Senator Ted Cruz. Carpenter has a new book out tomorrow. It's called Gaslighting America, Why We Love It When Trump Lies to Us. It's been called riveting. You can get it on Amazon and your local bookstore. Amanda, congratulations. Laura, let me start with you. I want to start with a quote from the lawsuit. Quote, Mr. Trump knew that his false, disparaging statement would be read by people around the world, as well as widely reported, and that Miss Clifford, that's Stormy Daniels' real name, would be subjected to threats of violence, economic harm, and reputational damage as a result. What do you think of that case? Is that legitimate? Is that credible to you?
Well, the reason they framed it the way they did is because they essentially outlined for you what the standard would be to show that this was actually defamation. But it's still a very uphill battle, Jake. You have to take a lot of different nuances, tie them together, and try to build a case. What do I mean by that? Well, number one, you have to assume that it was inferred. They're talking about her. I think we can cross that off the list. They know that it's actually about Stephanie Clifford. The other issue here, however, is whether it's an opinion or whether it's fact. If it's pure opinion, then courts are not inclined to look at this as defamatory. If it can be proven as true or false, they're much more inclined to say this is a stronger case. But remember, there is actually a defamation case you can compare this to, Jake. Summers Ervos, where he called them liars. All women who accused him of sexual impropriety as liars. Here, you have a little bit more of a convoluted interpretation, but still, it's a strong enough case that I think a court will look at that and combine with New York and some reservos and say, we've got a problem, Mr. President.
And Laura, sticking with you in the legal matter here, the other lawsuit involving Stormy Daniels is now on hold. This one was now filed in the Southern District of New York. Is there any significance to that?
I think the court is showing you here there's going to be overlap between what's happening with Michael Cohen and his case following the raid of his home, his office, and his hotel room, and what happened in California in the NDA case, but whether it's valid or not. A court does not want to waste its judicial economy and say, I want to have all these other matters up for grabs and not be able to actually get a response. The court wants to wait until they know that Cohen will be able to testify, will give productive and fruitful conversations. And if you can't do that, if a delay is more appropriate to get that, so be it. You're seeing that here.
Susan Page, we have a lot to talk about today, and later in the show we'll be talking about immigration, the border, North Korea, and much more. But we're leading the show because this lawsuit is breaking, and it's President Trump once again. He didn't need to send that tweet, but once again he sends out that tweet. He has a defamation lawsuit. He's stepping on his own message about the stuff he wants to talk about in his presidency.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it seems to me that the president doesn't have so much a legal peril with this lawsuit. For one thing, they're going to have to meet the standard of actual malice because she is a public figure. That's the same standard that protects journalists sometimes in our reporting against suits like this. But there is a political peril here. It keeps front and center these allegations about him and a porn star after the other lawsuit, the lawsuit against Michael Cohen, had been gotten a delay for 90 days. So in that way, it swamps other things that the White House would prefer to talk about on an issue that is damaging to the president.
And Amanda, the president had remained silent for a long time about Stormy Daniels, but he sent that tweet. Now there's a lawsuit. Isn't this the argument for the president showing more discipline and perhaps having people around him who can tell him to stop tweeting?
Well, sure, absolutely. But the president can't stop himself. The gaslighting continues. All of these situations with the president have to do with the secrets that he has kept and the lies that have been told to keep them. These women have come out and said, this happened to me. In the case, there's payments that were made. You know, the press found out about this first. That's the reason it came out. And yet the president and his allies expected these women to keep up the lie. And then they went to the public and said, this is what happened. They turn around and say, you're the liar. This is the gaslighting that the president continues to engage in on any number of topics. He can't stop doing it. That's why I wrote a book all about it, because once you understand the method to his madness, you will be able to predict his every move again and again.
And Bakari, the president seemed to admit last week that Michael Cohen represented him in the Stormy Daniels case. Take a listen.
Well, as a percentage of my overall legal work, a tiny, tiny little fraction. But Michael would represent me and represent me on some things. He represents me like with this crazy Stormy Daniels deal.
And Bakari, yesterday, Michael Avenatti told me on State of the Union that he thinks they'll be able to prove the president knew about that agreement and the $130,000 payment. Once again, the president, his own worst enemy sometimes.
Well, the president, what we do know about Donald Trump is that he is a horrible, horrible client. He's very, very difficult to manage if you represent him. One of the things that we now know by making that statement is that he has some privity with Michael Cohen. He has a relationship with Michael Cohen. We also know that lawyers cannot go out and agree to settlements, let alone pay those settlements out of their own pocket, without their client knowing. And so there has to be some trepidation in the Cohen camp, because now Donald Trump has literally just said that, hey, you know, you represented me, and you represented me a small amount, but you did represent me in this matter. Where it's also very dangerous is that in the Southern District of New York, we were having this discussion about whether or not the voluminous material that was accumulated in his search warrant was too much and that they needed to slow down. But he said that he only represented him in a small amount of matters. Therefore, I think that the case in the Southern District of New York will go forward as well. The president, again, is talking way too much.